As artificial intelligence continues to play an increasing role across the federal government, a critical issue facing IT leaders is how best to ensure the security, privacy, and control of the data and the infrastructure essential for managing AI workloads. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and here to share their perspective on that is Randy Soper, Chief of Artificial Intelligence and Information Technology at the IRS. Randy, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks, Wyatt. Appreciate it.
So let's start by asking kind of a baseline question. What types of AI use cases are getting the most significant investment support at the IRS? And how do you see those investments bringing greater innovation to the agency's
It's
mission?
a really exciting time at the IRS right now, Wyatt. As most Americans are aware, we received a lot of investment from the Inflation Reduction Act. And we have a strategic plan associated with the Inflation Reduction Act to improve taxpayer experience, improve compliance, particularly for high income and large businesses, and to improve our internal business operations. And if you look at the details of our strategic operating plan, which are published online, you'll see that we're looking to use data and analytics to improve all of those areas. And so we're really excited about the potential that artificial intelligence brings to the agency to be able to deliver on the promises of the Inflation Reduction Act.
And then when it comes to controlling security and costs, how do you view the pros and cons of managing data in private, let's say, on-prem service stacks versus more familiar government authorized commercial service stacks?
I think part of what we need to do when we think about artificial intelligence is to differentiate between sort of traditional artificial intelligence, and the recent executive order is really expansive. It's looking at how do we manage those risks associated with all artificial intelligence, including traditional machine learning techniques. But I think a lot of people, when they think about artificial intelligence, they're thinking about the new innovations associated with generative AI, large language models that have become really exciting in the last year or so. As experts in this area, we have to really look at the problems associated with supply chain risk. If you think about GPT, when you think about Chat GPT, that stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And the interesting piece there is the P. All of these are pre-trained. And so they all come sort of packaged together. Companies have taken a lot of data and a lot of sort of architecture and invested a lot in training those architectures to build intelligence into these models in advance. And so then you've got to figure out how to manage all of that supply chain risk. There's really two approaches to that. One is to take open source models, bring them into the boundary of the agency and host them internally. And the other is to make use of proprietary commercial models that are hosted outside the boundary of the agency. Both of those have risks associated with them and costs associated with them. And some are more appropriate for some use cases than others. And we have to look at that from a cybersecurity standpoint, from a privacy and a legal standpoint, and also from an analytic risk standpoint. And so we're approaching each use case individually, looking at all of those factors as we do our design. And at the IRS, we think both approaches, sort of commercial endpoints and privately hosted models, are going to be important to us moving forward.
Next, I'd like to explore a little more deeply the computing power that's required to do this AI. And I can't think of an agency that probably has more data to crunch than the IRS. So talk to me a little bit about how you think about managing computing resources. For example, how capable is IRS or maybe government in general at being able to centrally manage what kinds of workloads get managed on CPUs versus GPUs, and how you make effective and efficient use of those compute resources depending on the workloads?
Yeah, so this is a real challenge, I think, for government in general. We've got a lot of modernization being thrown at us all at once. I think if we were extremely mature in our cloud approaches, this would probably be an easy problem. I think if you look out commercially, there's an opportunity here to sort of abstract between the infrastructure layer and the compute layers and be able to make decisions in real time. But that kind of maturity is something that we struggle with currently, and now we're being compounded with the urgency to move forward with these new technologies like artificial intelligence that demand sort of more exotic computer infrastructure that's relatively scarce in the government market and relatively expensive. So now we've got a choice. We can either buy GPU hardware and install it on-prem, which is sort of contrary to the direction we were going in terms of cloud migration, or we can try to compute for sort of scarce cloud resources in the government space. I think we're going to find that the answer is going to be a little bit of both, right? So the AI changes, the changes in the AI market have made us relook at the value of GPU infrastructure on-prem for the IRS. Cloud is something that's really exciting as a capability for AI because of the scalability is an interesting value proposition. But that market for GPUs right now, plus some of the governance associated with sort of sunk capital costs associated with infrastructure, make it really appealing to kind of relook whether or not some level of GPUs housed internally is going to be worthwhile for us. At the same time, I think we're going to find over time that that GPU market in the gov cloud space is going to get better as that government demand pushes the commercial cloud providers to look at the balance of where they have their GPUs. It's not that there's really a total scarcity of GPUs everywhere in the world. It's just that right now the focus is very much on the commercial side. As government demand gets more and more intense for GPUs to be able to host internal large language models and to be able to make use of GovCloud hosted foundation models, I think we're going to see more and more GPUs kind of make their way across that boundary into GovCloud spaces.
Well, you make some very interesting points there at this point in time, right? The race for GPUs broadly, commercial as well as government competing for that, and as well as the IRS really having to play an amazing game of catch up, you know, and prioritize what to do first when there's so much to do. I appreciate you must be juggling a lot in your weekly meetings with your team. Hey, let me ask a little about, so can you talk about how all this and the growing impact of AI is starting to really shape your agency's overall infrastructure investment strategy? So you mentioned, you know, thinking about the cloud initially, but maybe the resources are better going more locally for GPUs, but broadly for your overall infrastructure investment, how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I think, again, I mean, I think where we were looking at how can we move to the cloud? How can we move more real time, more streaming, more cloud native services? And that's especially as we're moving into trying to improve taxpayer experience. So there's a lot of demand to be able to do things in a lot more streaming way, to be able to support those experiences, move away from what we call sort of old bank to new bank experiences for the taxpayer at the IRS. I don't know that some of these things are going to change that sort of cloud first approach when we talk about streaming architectures. I think those things are really important to be able to take advantage of cloud native capabilities. I think it's more about sort of some of our bigger architectural challenges. I think we're relooking the on-prem presence. What's the value of GPUs to be able to host things like foundational models that are going to be sort of central pieces of our infrastructure? And then at the same time, what's the real need for sort of some of these large transactional data stores to move to the cloud, and where's the real balance there? So I think we're going to continue our cloud migration journey in some parts, but I think we're relooking other parts of our infrastructure investment.
Really interesting. Appreciate you sharing that. And then lastly, as you look at the year ahead, what are the biggest issues or gaps that the IRS is starting to address to take fuller advantage of AI's potential?
Yeah, so I think what we're trying to do is, as we're trying to make sure that our governance structures are sort of distributed. So I think as you look at sort of the AI executive order and what it's asking us to do, we had already put into place a governance approach for analytics. we're working to make sure that that governance approach is aligned to the rest of our governance, our IT governance. And so our software development lifecycle, our technology insertion, those governance frameworks are now aligned to our AI governance, and that allows us to take advantage of things like third-party AI, open source models, commercial AI, so that as they come into the agency, we have the right touch points between our IT governance processes and our AI governance processes, so that we can make sure that we're trapping all of those instances of AI and are managing them properly. So that's one thing that we're doing. I think the other is we're maturing our process at identifying use cases and prioritizing them. Some of the use cases where we're talking about direct taxpayer facing AI are probably just a bridge too far right now because of the risks associated with the technology. But there are some really interesting use cases that are relatively sophisticated that we're looking at that I think are going to be able to deliver some taxpayer value through enhancing the work of our customer service representatives and the folks who are involved in compliance. And so those are areas where we're looking.
Well, Randy Soper, thank you for taking a few minutes to share your perspective on how AI and AI workloads are really an important part of your investment strategy, obviously, but how you're continuing to look at it as you go forward to support not only the IRS, but America's taxpayers. So thank you so much for joining us on today's program.
Thanks, Wyatt. Appreciate it.